This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
And welcome back to another edition of Issues in Education. Mondays during the Noon Report, we spotlight the issues impacting our schools with Dr. Ralph Kerr at the Teaching and Learning Institute in Houghton, New York. Well, Ralph, welcome back to the program, sir. I know it was a busy weekend at Houghton, even though you don't have nothing to do with the university there. It was commencement weekend there in Houghton, New York. A ceremony, from what I hear, went off without a hitch, which has not been the case at so many colleges and universities in light of the upheaval we're witnessing over these anti-war protests. Many schools, Ralph, have added security for graduation. Some are suspending or expelling students, and a few, sadly, have even canceled their commencement exercises, if you can believe that. I thought it was interesting what New York has proposed. They're planning to withhold tuition assistance from any student who engages in anti-Semitic activity. Do you support that legislation? I know you're not always a fan of Albany getting involved in things, but what do you think of that proposed legislation?
Well, again, I'm going to say that Albany doesn't need to get involved. The college and university administrators just need to get a backbone. And there's always a balance between free speech and hate speech. And I think that universities can just act on that themselves and just decline admission on the basis that people like that are a danger to the safety of their campus. Yeah. I think that would solve the problem.
You're seeing this at the U of R and at Syracuse University as well. I heard one of the student protesters at the U of R act like, well, the president won't negotiate with us. It almost like he was in a position of negotiating, and this is some kind of a collective bargaining session.
Right.
That to me is the jux of the matter, is that these universities think they have to capitulate to these students' demands. That's not how it works, right?
Not when I went to university, that's for sure. We were happy to be there and looking for a good education, not trying to negotiate with anybody.
Exactly. Well, let's talk about compulsory education for a bit. This is a very important time of year in New York with the school boards and budgets being decided next week, Tuesday, May 21st. Here it is already. I know a lot of taxpayers, I'm one of those, that's just torn because, we're facing a budget that sadly is raising our taxes above even the tax cap law. And then we're hearing, if we don't approve that inordinate amount of spending, that some jobs are going to be lost. Really crucial jobs like school resource officers or teaching assistants or assistant baseball coaches are all on the chopping block. Nobody wants to see that. So how do you reconcile as a voter? Give us some counsel in this regard.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to do that because I understand the wrestling that people are going through. Let's just set the stage a little bit and go back to when schools took money from the federal government during the pandemic and actually just started adding staff in order to spend that money. And now the money is dried up and they don't have it. So the tax cap, for instance, in New York State is set each year, and this year it's set at 2%. So if school district's budget increases, if it's 2% or less, then it just simply requires a 50% majority. But in districts like you mentioned, many of them, in my mind, unfortunately, have decided to go over the cap, and in some cases, maybe like 5% over the cap. Yeah. That requires 60% of the voters. So generally, if you're a no vote on a budget, honestly, it doesn't make that much difference because it's pretty easy to get the 50%. But when you press that out to needing 60%, one vote can make a huge difference. So if there's concerns about it, then I would encourage people that are looking at a budget that's over the tax cap to really consider voting against the budget. Yeah. The bottom line is there are many less students and there are many more staff members. And the ones that you mentioned, unfortunately, are the ones that they really put people into a tailspin because they're considered critical positions. And schools have a way of pushing those as being on the chopping block, which just adds to the dilemma that people are faced with.
Yeah, what I can't understand, I don't want to get in the weeds too much on this, but the dollars and cents of it in the particular school district where my son, I had a daughter daughter who is enrolled in this school as well. In just 2 years, the budget has gone up $17 million in just 2 years. A $17 million increase. And I'm having a tough time wrapping my mind around, is that kind of typical with what school districts are asking of voters?
No, it's not. Some districts are saying in their own minds, sort of like the president said last week, well, the people have the money. They might as well just spend it. And they, in this case, spend it on school. That's not the case. I mean, if we're honest, people don't have the money. People are really struggling right now. And facing $700, $800 tax increase is just not going to work for a good number of people. And I think it's unfortunate that schools have taken the position that they have, just looking for people to spend more money on school.
Well, hey, we have to bring up the FAFSA thing because I know that's been a big issue lately. The U.S. Education Secretary Miguel Cardona apologized during a congressional hearing last week for the delays. We've talked about them for weeks on this program. The rollout has been, in a word, disastrous. Was this a one-and-done kind of debacle, Ralph, or could something like this happen again? And if so, what steps need to be taken so that we don't have these sorts of hiccups in this FAFSA system again?
Well, the Congress needs to hold people like the secretaries accountable. I mean, the Congress passed legislation a couple of years ago directing them to roll out this new FAFSA form. And, there should be an investigation to find out why it didn't happen. As we mentioned last week, one of the parties involved has been let go. But, it seems to me that maybe it's time for the secretary to go as well. Mm-hmm. I have to mention, as part of this, that he was asked, despite the fact that he has a son and a daughter, he was asked, are there physical differences between men and women? And he couldn't respond to, or refused to respond to that question. A guy like that needs to go.
Yeah, and it's hard to believe he's got the same job that Bill Bennett used to have, the wonderful education secretary under Ronald Reagan. I miss the good old days. But hey, Ralph, we have great discussions this week. If folks have questions about any of the topics they heard, you have a wonderful website where they can learn more. What is that, if you would?
That's simply whyrun.org, whyrun.org. And let me just say that our phone number is also on there. If you have a really immediate question, just feel free to give me a call on the phone.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.